Tadi sudah berdua cocok. Nah, muncul ada startnya nih. Coba. Yes. Ini siap dipakai gak ada?
Siap. Angkatannya dikeluarkan.
Karena dia di situ dulu. Bisa juga.
Hello, good morning, Rachel.
Check, check. Can you hear my voice? All right, ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? We will begin the opening ceremony shortly on 8 o'clock. To all participants joining us via Zoom, kindly ensure that your microphones are muted throughout the session. And you also can follow this webinar on YouTube channel in Pascasarjana UIN Antasari Banjarmasin. Thank you very much for your attention and cooperation.
Bagaimana orang bercadar-cadar begitu, Bu? Sementara negara kita kan tidak begitu anunya. Kalau di Arab memang karena debu, panas. Ritual, paham-paham. Ini tadi punya tidak melanggar juga agama. Benar. Saya strict toh ya, matanya saja kurang kelihatan. Cocoknya dia mengajar.
Apa nih?
Baik, kita akan mulai sesi pembukaan. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone from Indonesia. Before we begin, it is my honor to acknowledge the presence of several esteemed figures who are with us this morning. Honorable Director of UIN Antasari Banjarmasin, Profesor Dr. Hajah Nida Mufidah MPD. Honorable the Director and Vice Director of the Postgraduate Program. Honorable our distinguished speakers, the Head and Secretary of the Postgraduate Program, the Head and Secretary of the Undergraduate English Language Education Program, and all home-based lecturers of the English Language Education Master's Program, students, and everyone joining us today, whether you are watching through Zoom meeting or via YouTube live streaming on Pascasarjana UIN Antasari's channel. My name is Husnul Atia, and it is my honor to serve you as a Master of Ceremony for today's international webinar hosted by the English Language Education Master's Program, Postgraduate of UIN Antasari Banjarmasin, under the theme, Becoming Competent English Language Education Researchers in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. This webinar is a part of our ongoing academic effort to foster global dialogue and strengthen research competence in English language education, especially as artificial intelligence continues to transform how we teach, learn, and conduct research. Thank you for joining us and being part of this important conversation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let us begin our program by reciting Basmalah together. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Now, please join us for the national anthem of the Republic of Indonesia, Indonesia Raya. Next, let us listen to the hymn
Iya kan? Buin, anu pembicara bara Australia. Anu,
Well, distinguished
iya di
participants,
Buman
ladies
ini
and gentlemen, now we are pleased to invite Dr. Hajah Nur Maulidiah, MA, the head of the English Language Education Master's Program, to deliver her welcoming remarks.
to deliver.
Thank you very much, Ibu Husnul Athia. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable Rector of Antasari State Islamic University Banjarmasin, Professor Dr. Hajah Nida Mufidah, MPD, the Honorable Director of Postgraduate Program of Antasari State Islamic University Banjarmasin, Professor Dr. Zulfa Jamali SAG, MPD, the distinguished speakers, the first speaker, Associate Professor Dr. Rachel Berg from the University of Newcastle. And the second speaker is Associate Professor Dr. Haslina Abdullah, who will be joining us later today. The Honorable Vice Director of the Postgraduate Program of Antasari State Islamic University Banjarmasin, Dr. Wahyuddin MPDI. And the head of undergraduate program of English language education, all the head of departments and secretaries, students, undergraduate and postgraduate students, lecturers, teachers, and all the participants in this international webinar. So first of all, I would like to welcome you all in this international webinar under the theme Becoming Competent English Language Education Researchers in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. Today we are truly honored to have outstanding speakers. So as I mentioned, the first speaker is Associate Professor Dr. Rachel Berg, the Deputy Head of School, Research Training, School of Education at the University of Newcastle. And our second speaker is Associate Professor Dr. Haslina Abdullah, the Deputy Dean, Academic and International, Faculty of Major Language Studies at University Science Islam Malaysia. So Rachel was my PhD principal supervisor, and I'm pleased to have her with us today. And for Dr. Haslina Abdullah is also my colleague. So we met in Australia in a conference in 2023, and we presented our papers, in a conference in the University of Sydney at the time. So I'm delighted to welcome our large audience today, consisting of lecturers, researchers, and a significant number of undergraduate and postgraduate students. So the highest number of participants today are from the undergraduate and postgraduate students from different universities and institutions. So the theme of our webinar today is not choosing by coincidence. Is directly aligned with with the graduate profile of our graduate of our English language education
Ya
master's
Allah, jual di
program.
jalan kayaknya Mbak Anu.
So
Ada
so
deh.
this
Belum lah pasti. Ada dong kalau anu.
this graduate profile is becoming competent language researchers. With two other graduate profiles, which are becoming innovative language educator and creative edutechnopreneur. So in today's academic landscape, AI has become embedded in many aspects, of research, from literature review and also from academic writing to pedagogical innovation. Yet we need to know how to use that wisely, use AI wisely, ethically, and also responsibly. And so that's because this is the era of today. That is the era of artificial intelligence. For the next speech, I would like to invite our rector, Professor Dr. Hajanida Mufida, MPD, to deliver her speech and also to open this international webinar formally. Thank you very much. I will once again, I welcome all the participants and also, of course, especially to our outstanding speakers. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Mrs. Maulidia, for the remarks. And now we are honored to welcome Professor Dr. Hajanida Mufidah, MPD, Rector of UIN Antasari Banjarmasin, who will also officially open today's webinar. For Ibu Nida, time is yours.
Oke, Alhamdulillah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Rabbil alamin, salatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin, sayyidina Maulana Muhammadin wa ala alihi washabihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Alhamdulillah, this is a nice time for me to be here in this webinar, international seminar. And then I have to say that distinguish our speakers here, Associate Professor Rahel from University Newcastle, Australia, and then of course also Associate Professor Dr. Hazlina Abdullah from University Science Islam Malaysia, and then of course also our director from postgraduate University of Islam Antasari, and then also the vice. This is for the director of Mr. Professor Zulfa, and then also the vice director is Mr. Wahyudin. And then also this is a great time to say that for all of you, for the head of English department, for Master Degree Ibu Maudia, good time to meet you. All of the participants and then also students, and then also mainly for the lecturers of University State of Islamic Antasari Banjarmasin. Alhamdulillah, this is actually very great moment for holding of this moment for international webinar. And then the topic, this is actually really well known for this era for becoming competent for the language education researchers in this age of artificial intelligence. And then of course, I hope that this seminar international would be benefit for you all, because this is in this era of digital technology. All of us as researchers, as educators, we need or we require a blend of technology literacy, and then of course in this topic also we need about research methodology, and then of course we should how to focus on human-centric skills, and then of course we need ethics also for this artificial intelligence. And then of course also, even though that AI is a powerful partner for us, but we are as human beings, we should be critical analysis researchers, critical analysis as educators also for data. And then of course, AI, it cannot be as substitution for human being because that we need also human insight. And then of course, we need also for critical judgment for all of our data analysis for the research. And then of course, really very happy, even though that English department for master degree, this is the new department in this year. This is as the first semester for master degree. Really very great time for having this international seminar. We can open our mind by having this wonderful, great speakers from Newcastle University and then also from University Science Islam Malaysia. This is USIM, yeah. I have ever come to this USIM in Nilai, yeah. I have ever also sent to our student for international students exchange program for about maybe in 2020 when it was before of pandemic. We sent about 6 students for students mobility program for staying there for one semester in USIM. Alhamdulillah, maybe anytime that we can have a memorandum of understanding again for continue for USIM and then also for Newcastle University. Okay, well, everybody, let's enjoy this international program and then of course take the benefit. This is actually how can you relate collaboration between human and machine for this era for making all of us that we will be as great educators and then also we will be as a great researchers. By saying Basmalah, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, let's open this international seminar entitled Becoming Competent Language Education Researchers in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. Hopefully that it will be as meaningful moment and then we can adapt and then also we can implement all the result of these international seminars. Thank you very much for this English department for Ibu Dr. Maulidia and then also all the lecturers, all students, and then mainly for the director of this Pascasarjana Universitas Islam Negeri Antasari Banjarmasin, which support all of these activities. Thank you. Goodbye. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Prof. Nida, for the remarks and officially open this international webinar. Now, ladies and gentlemen and distinguished guests, to bless our event, let us listen to a prayer led by Muhammad Rifki Rujani, MPD.
Alright. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Amin amin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Hamdan syakirin, hamdan na'imin, hamdan ya'afi ni'amah wa yukafi mazidah. Ya Rabbana lakal hamdu kama yanbaghi li jalali wajhikal karim wa azimi sultanik. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Ya Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate, we humbly raise our hands to you at this impactful webinar on becoming competent English language education researchers in the age of artificial intelligence. We thank you for granting us the intellect, the passion for inquiry, and the focus to participate fully in this academic gathering. Ya Allah, bless our minds, grant wisdom to all the lecturers, researchers, and students here. May the knowledge we'll share today be deeply embedded in our practice and research. Ya Allah, strengthen our competence and sharpen our critical thinking. Eliminate our path to use this artificial intelligence ethically, responsibly, and effectively, not to replace human creativity, but rather to support our scholarly pursuits. Ya Allah, grant us the skill to prepare the next generations of teachers, lecturers, and researchers who are digitally literate and linguistically proficient. Ya Allah, accept our efforts. Make our research a source of genuine benefit for the community, a catalyst for institutional growth, and a contribution to the global advancement of knowledge. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. ثم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Mr. Rifki, to lead us in prayer. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed to the photo session. Please kindly turn on your camera and our team will capture it.
Okay, ready? To please turn on the camera and also play the virtual background. Okay, I will capture. Okay, next. Yes. Okay, the third capture. Okay, it's done, Ibu.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Yoke.
Alhamdulillah.
Next, before we begin our main session, we invite you to take a moment to get to know our program more closely. UIN Antasari, featuring our vision, values, learning environment, and the dedicated people behind the video.
Okay. Good. Okay.
Every story begins with a need. And for UIN Antasari Banjarmasin, that need came from our stakeholders, teachers, schools, alumni, and education practitioners who hoped for a postgraduate program that could strengthen English education and prepare educators for a rapidly changing world. From surveys and conversations, one message became clear. Our region needed an English language education master's program that was research-driven, future-oriented, and able to answer real challenges in English teaching and learning. The idea to open this new program was first initiated by the former rector, Professor Dr. Haji Mujibur Rahman MA, who envisioned expanding academic opportunities and elevating the quality of English educators in the region. This vision was then carried forward by Professor Dr. Hajah Nida Mufidah MPD, who was the Vice Rector of Academic back then, and now the Rector of UIN Antasari, who led the proposal team that shaped the program into a solid academic foundation. Through focused group discussions with experts and practitioners, the curriculum was refined with clarity and intention. At the heart of this program lies a clear vision to become a leading master's program in South Kalimantan, championing innovation in English language education through the integration of Islamic values, technology, noble character, Banjar local wisdom, and world-class competence. The program officially received its degree of establishment, followed by a B accreditation from LAMDIC, affirming its academic readiness and credibility. After its launch, a wave of outreach activities began, from school visits to digital promotions and community engagement. The response was warm and enthusiastic. Admission soon opened, and our first cohort of students across both regular and non-regular classes joined the program. They came from many backgrounds, educators, practitioners, and a number of fresh graduates from all over Kalimantan who choose to continue their studies at the one and only English Language Education Master's Program in this province. Their first semester marked a new beginning, a space to grow, to question, to explore, and to deepen their understanding of English language education. Supported by dedicated lectures, students learn advanced linguistics, research-based teaching, curriculum design, and digital learning strategies. The program prepares them to become innovative English language educators, competent researchers, and creative edu-technopreneurs. From stakeholders' needs to visionary leadership to the shaping of curriculum and accreditation, this program stands as a shared achievement built with purpose and sincerity. This is the English Language Education Master's Program at UIN Antasari, a program built with purpose, designed with care, and shaped by the hopes of the community it serves. Here, your journey as an educator continues with deeper knowledge, broader perspectives, and a brighter future ahead.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, my name is Normal Lydia, and I'm the head of the English Language Education Master's Program of the Postgraduate Studies at Antasari State Islamic University, Banjarmasin in South Kalimantan, Indonesia. The English Language Education Master's Program is a newly established program at Antasari University, officially approved by the Indonesian Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Technology on March 10, 2025. It is also has been already accredited by LAMDIC from the Accreditation Council for Education. It is the first ever program in English language education in South Kalimantan. We are proud to have outstanding academic staff and lecturers who hold master's and doctoral degrees from reputable universities in Indonesia and also abroad, in countries such as Malaysia, the United States, and Australia. They are highly competent and professional in the fields of English language education and teaching English as a foreign language. So what are you waiting for? Come and join us at the English Language Education Master's Program at UIN Antasari Banjarmasin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
All right, thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen and distinguished guests, we now arrive at the highlight of today's program, the international webinar session. This session will be led by our moderator, Adinda Afifah Anwar Emli, lecturer of UIN Antasari Banjarmasin. Our distinguished speakers today are Associate Professor Dr. Rachel Burke from the University of Newcastle, Australia, And then Ibu Dr. Hajah Nur Maulidiah MA from UIN Antasari Banjarmasin, Indonesia, and Associate Professor Dr. Hazlina Abdullah from University Science Islam, Malaysia. Without further ado, we now hand the session over to our moderator. Miss Adinda, time is yours.
Thank you,
Okay.
Miss Atia, for giving
Okay.
me time.
Who
Yes,
can
Ibu
say
Nida.
you, Adinda?
Yes,
Okay.
Ibu Nida.
I would like to say thank you very much for Associate Professor Dr. Hasselburg as speakers today from University of Newcastle, and then also for Associate Professor Dr. Azrina Abdullah from University Science of Islam Malaysia for the speakers, and also for Ibu Maulidia. Actually, I would like to join this program, but I'm really sorry I should come to another program in our university. And I'm really sorry I should leave earlier from this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ibu
Assalamualaikum.
Nida, for joining us
Yeah.
for the opening of this section.
Okay, thank you. See you later.
Well, thank you, Ms. Atia, for giving me time to continue our core agenda. Good morning, distinguished speakers, esteemed guests, and all participants joining us today. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Adinda, and I'm truly honored to serve you as your moderator for core agenda. Welcome to the international webinar hosted by the English Language Education Master's Program with the theme Becoming Competent English Language Education Researchers in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. The theme is not only relevant but also deeply inspiring. It also encourages us to think about how AI can enrich our work as educators and researchers, and also helping us to explore new methods, deepen our insight, and support our learners more effectively. It is a pleasure to be here with all of you as we gather to explore how AI continues to transform the landscape of research and language education. Today, we are truly fortunate to learn from remarkable speakers who bring diverse expertise and international perspectives to this international important discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, this international webinar will be held in two sections, and our first section will be presented by Associate Professor Dr. Resselberg, and the second is Dr. Hajah Nur Maulidiah MA, and our second section will be presented by Associate Professor Dr. Hazlina Abdullah from Malaysia. Okay, before we begin our discussion, allow me to introduce our distinguished speakers deeper. Our first speaker is Associate Professor Dr. Resselberg, an applied linguist and Deputy Head of School Research in the School of Education at the University of Newcastle, Australia. Ressel's research, teaching, and advocacy focus on strengths-based approaches to languages education for learners from historically underrepresented backgrounds, particularly individuals with lived experiences of migration and displacement. Ressel is co-founder and co-convener of the Australian Association for Research in Education, a culturally and linguistically diverse, an education special interest group, and an affiliate researcher with the UNESCO Chair for Refugee Integration through Education, Language, and the Arts. Our second speaker is Dr. Hajah Nur Maulidiah MA. She is a senior lecturer in the English Language Education Department and head of the English Language Education Master's Program at UIN Antasari Banjarmasin. She obtained her bachelor's degree in English Language and Literature and master's degree in teaching English as a second language at the International Islamic University, Malaysia. She received her PhD in education from the University of Newcastle, Australia. Her research interests are in teaching English as foreign language, TESOL, academic writing, critical reading and writing, and academic literacy. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, I would like to invite our first speaker to begin the presentation, Associate Professor Dr. Resselberg. Russell, how are you today?
I'm very proud to be here. Thank you very much. I'm very excited
Thank
to
you.
be invited to this wonderful event.
Thank you for coming, Russell.
Thank you. Okay,
Okay.
I'm going to share my screen now.
Okay, thank you. Time is yours, Russell.
Thank you. Okay, so can everyone see my slides there? Is that clear?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah?
It's absolutely clear.
Thank you.
Yes, very
Fantastic.
clear.
Well, to our distinguished leaders who are joining us today, to my wonderful colleagues in EFL Education and all of the postgraduate students we have with us, I want to say thank you for this wonderful invitation to be part of this incredible event. Also, I must say this is particularly special for me because I was invited by one of my wonderful former PhD students, Dr. Nord Maud Lydia. I cannot believe, after all of that hard work, or I should say I can believe, but it's amazing to see that you are now heading this wonderful new program, the first for South Kalimantan, in EFL education. I'm just incredibly proud to see how far you've come in such a short period of time. I always knew you would do great things, Lydia, but in such a short period of time is very, very, very surprising and wonderful to see. So yes, I'm really, really pleased to be part of this event. I'm also really pleased that all of the speakers so far, the institutional representatives, the facilitators, etc., have talked about the need for critical engagement with AI in educational research and language educational research. And I think that also speaks to the kind of program you're offering and the kind of thinking that you're doing as researchers. And so I'm really, really proud to be invited to be part of this event today. So I want to begin by acknowledging that I am joining you from the beautiful unceded lands of the Pambalong clan of the Awabakal Nation. They are the traditional custodians of the lands where I work. And I want to pay my respects to the elders of those lands, past, present, and future. And I want to extend those respects to the elders of all of the lands where Australian universities now stand. And I want to recognise that as we come together today to talk about the AI landscape and the rapid changes that are happening in our world, that these lands where Australian universities now stand have been places of great knowledge, teaching and learning for thousands and thousands of years, and that sovereignty was never ceded. So there is a growing body of research that's exploring the use of AI in English language education and indeed in language education more broadly. And for me, as I kind of engage with this research, I see that there are three key categories that speak to the different ways that I think AI and generative AI are currently being integrated into research. So when I look at the body of literature that's coming out from around the world, there are kind of three key categories that I identify. And these are, the first category is AI as a tool for language learning. So thinking about augmented learning, language learning using AI. And of course, adaptive learning systems that that have the capacity to use, kind of tailored learning approaches based on input from users, using voice assistance, error correction, etc. So tailoring language learning to the individual based on the input around their language proficiency. And that's probably the largest, I guess, tool or the largest way that AI is being looked at to date in language learning is as a tool for language learning. What are the apps? What are the affordances? What are the constraints in this area? And how can we use them as educational researchers? How can we use them as teachers to help people acquire language? There's a second category that looks at, okay, how can AI be used as a research tool in language learning? So to actually help us examine, really large data sets of language learning patterns, for example, in grammar, in vocab, in discourse. How can those tools that we use to help with language learning, how can they also help us as researchers to think about all of the data we have around a cohort of learners and their language learning processes, and think about their progress and identify factors that seem to be influencing their language acquisition. So previously, where we needed to use very specific, tools for analyzing large data sets, AI is making that much easier for us as researchers. And so we have a second area or a theme, if you like, in language educational research, applied linguistics, that looks at AI as a tool to kind of really support the methods we use to analyze, document, engage with language learning. And then we have the third kind of theme, which has already been talked about today by our distinguished leaders and colleagues who've opened the session. And those are the ethical issues related to AI and language learning and learning more broadly. And I think there's a lot of work going on this in terms of policy, particularly institutionally, issues regarding notions of plagiarism, issues regarding, well, if AI can generate a lesson plan, or AI can generate a unit of work, or AI can critique and provide feedback on a student's sample of work, what are our teachers learning? How do we know what they're bringing to their education? Where are the teachers' higher order thinking, that critical engagement, which is what our previous speakers spoke about today? So there's a lot of work, I think, going on in how can we make assessment safe in AI, meaning how can we know what the students know, and how can we know how they're using AI to support that or augment that rather than replace their own knowledge. But there's also a lot of work going on around what does AI mean for smaller dialects, so dialects that are spoken by fewer people globally. What does it mean for diversity of language? What does it mean for translanguaging? So using, Bahasa language to, my Bahasa language skills to work on English language skills across, can AI play a role in actually drawing on my linguistic strengths? And then, how would that work in terms of preserving our differences as well as our commonalities? And AI and cultural preservation, because when we look at language, we're always looking at culture. So if we're thinking about our accents, we're thinking about dialect, we're thinking about the unique ways that language works in a local context, and then we're bringing in AI, which tends to work from large data sets and has up to this point worked very much in terms of standardizing accent and standardizing dialect. What does that mean for our cultural identities? And of course, this fits in with the decolonization agenda within language education, which looks at how can we decentralize language education away from those traditional kinds of sites of privilege. How can we make it more accessible? How can we make sure that language education is something that reinforces our first language identities and cultures, our first languages, regardless of how many we have, rather than replacing those languages with a global language, for example. So those are the three kind of main categories that I see very much as sort of themes within the existing literature. And I'm going to speak to each of those themes today in different degrees of depth. And I'm also going to draw on some work that I've done, in my own research that speak to each of these themes as well. So the presentation, I've kind of divided it into three parts so that you know where we're going. The first part is a broader look at, okay, what are some of the research directions? And I really like that you've named this webinar Becoming Competent, because I think we're all in a state of becoming with AI, and particularly with generative AI enhanced research, because it's changing so rapidly. We have to be, as speakers have said, open to and aware of and up to date with and thinking about these rapid changes and shifts in direction and what that means for our own identity as educators, as educational researchers. So I'm going to open with that kind of discussion of research directions more broadly. Where are the opportunities? Where are the affordances? Where are the opportunities to look at things differently in terms of language acquisition? Humans have been acquiring language for thousands of that, for so long. How is AI going to shape that necessarily? How is AI going to maybe change the way we understand and think about language acquisition? So looking at how it's shaping classroom practices, and that can be in a formal classroom or a language learning site outside of a formal classroom. How is it changing our assessment models? How is it impacting the way learners engage with, in this case, English as a foreign language education, their relationship with English, their relationship with their first languages, and how they see themselves as learners? And also looking at some new kind of methodological approaches that are enabled by AI-driven analytics, things that would have taken hours and hours of research assistant time. We now have these tools that can help us. And I think as educational researchers, one of the biggest things we've probably seen is the hours and hours of transcribing an interview, for example. In a very short, space of time, AI has allowed us to actually cut back on a lot of the expense around having things transcribed, because we have those transcription tools built in to the systems that we use. So, what new approaches are enabled by AI? And then how are those kinds of shifting our sense of self as educational researchers, but also looking at how it impacts teachers and learner attitudes and practices. So that's the sort of first part. The second part will focus more on my research. I'm going to draw on a particular study, but talk a little bit about a few other studies that I've conducted in this space. And basically, it's looking at the integration of AI in context, language learning context, especially for traditionally underrepresented cohorts. And what I mean by that is populations of learners who face additional barriers to EFL or ESL or EAL, English as an additional language education, because of their circumstances, because of what's happened to them in their lives. They face extra barriers. And so how does AI maybe help to support those learners, maybe our most disadvantaged learner groups? How does AI maybe help to support and remove some of those barriers? So I'm trying to look at, the potential for AI to support that more personalized learning, to provide timely feedback, to enhance students' communicative competence, and also to think about how AI might support those learners to integrate, to participate, to be part of classroom teacher-learner interactions. And I'll talk a bit about some of the findings that have come out of my research on that space. And then, of course, looking at some of the challenges and some of the risks in terms of AI in educational research. And then that will lead into the third part, which I'll finish on, which is, looking at the issues, the challenges, the ongoing questions. And, as with our title, Becoming Competent, this is changing every day. It's a very, very fast, rapidly changing field. So those ethical considerations, those ideas about what does it mean for what we might call, inverted commas, minority dialects or minority languages and dialects spoken by fewer people. What does it mean about data privacy, for instance? The classroom or pedagogical implications. How do we balance that human agency and creativity with algorithmic decision making? And which is basically what a lot of AI is telling you, this learner is likely to need this next based on what you've told me. But where does the human element come into that? Where does the human judgment? My student in Kalimantan might need this. My student in Brisbane might need that. Where is that localized cultural context and knowledge needed? What about the sustainability and the scalability? And this is where, it was really great to hear also discussed this morning, this notion of digital literacy. And we know that critical digital literacy is not something that we all have equal access to. How can we ensure that we're all having those kinds of opportunities to become critically literate in this technology, rather than just having AI do the work for us or tell us what to do? How can we use it, make sure our learners all have an equal opportunity or an equitable opportunity to access the knowledge they need to use it as a tool? And that is really important when we think about diverse educational experiences. Some people will have access to those opportunities equitably, to think about what it means to be a critical user of technology, and some people won't. What do we do about that? And then, of course, future research, looking at, longitudinal impacts. This is a major shift in how we think about our role as language teachers and language learners. What does this mean for professional identity, etc.? So these are some of the other kind of ongoing challenges and questions that are pertinent to this issue of becoming competent educational researchers in language in the AI-driven era. So we'll start with the first part, which is some of those research directions in an AI-enhanced landscape. So some of the kinds of key themes that people are kind of looking at. And I think the first thing that we need to ask ourselves too, when we look at the body of research that is in this space, is what is the difference between AI and generative AI? And also, why does that question matter? So I don't hear it asked that much, and I don't hear it kind of reflected on frequently in terms of educational research. A lot of times it's often it's all AI, it's all artificial intelligence. But of course, AI itself, we've been working with for much longer than generative AI. So there's quite a bit of research based on AI and language learning and language acquisition and teacher attitudes and all of those sorts of things. And I'm going to refer to one of an earlier study I did that was on AI, but we didn't call it that in 2019. The question really matters because of that human component, component about where does AI augment human thinking and human creation? So AI, of course, is focused on creating systems that can perform tasks that typically require humans to do them. So I gave the example of transcription. Any educational researcher who works with large, kind of interview data sets, etc., transcription over the last couple of years, it's like night and day, right? Much faster. Certainly, you can't just take it as completely accurate. There's going to be inaccuracies. You need to also think about things like the paralinguistics, so the things that go with the language. So you're getting the speech transcribed, but what were the other things? The hesitations, the body language, all of those things that can be important parts of data when we're interviewing people. But things like that are tasks that previously it would have required a human to listen to the recording and word for word transcribe. Those sorts of things are AI. So it's machine learning, it's the natural language processing, it's understanding how human language works. It's, understanding and being able to do things like recognize images, videos, facial recognition, that kind of thing. It's thinking about bots, so like learning chatbots and learning companions in that kind of sense, and some kind of decision-making elements. So if you think of something like Duolingo, the app, based on your performance on a certain grammar task, then the algorithm will decide which or predict which lesson or grammar point needs to be presented next, for example, or whether you need revision, etc. So this is all kind of that sort of machine learning element. So predictive analytics for learner performance. This learner has made these errors on this task. We predict that that person will likely benefit from this revision task. These were things that teachers needed to do previously, or we needed a human there to kind of take in that information and deduce what's going to be needed next, sort of diagnostic or needs analysis. The other examples are things like automated grading systems, particularly for fairly kind of straightforward, where there's a clear-cut answer, a multiple choice, there's not a lot of interpretation or nuance required. Those kinds of things are often, AI kind of assisted now. And of course, we know speech recognition for pronunciation assessment and feedback. So that's actually been around for a while. We just didn't really kind of call it that. But generative AI, Gen AI is a subset of AI that uses more advanced models to generate new content. So it's creating new content. It's not just sort of analyzing and predicting. It goes beyond that to then create original outputs, text, images, audio, whatever, based on patterns from these large data sets. So examples in language education might be things like ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini or whatever, generating essays or dialogues for language practice. So these are new, they're not just taking input and analyzing that, they're creating something new. It might be creating adaptive reading passages. So for, one student, their reading passages changed this way to suit their particular level of proficiency. For another student, it will be changed that way with different grammatical structures or more complex vocabulary or more complex clauses, grammatical clauses, because that matches their proficiency. So actually creating new things based on those requirements, and then producing things like synthetic speech for listening exercises. They can produce all, those apps can produce all of that. So Gen AI is generating as the name, new content. So that's a whole kind of step up, and that's where in the last couple of years there's been such a change for language education and language educational research. AI is analyzing, it's classifying, it's predicting. Gen AI can create, produce new visuals, produce new media, etc. Now, having said that, what it creates, depending on the situation, depending on your purpose, that's where we go back to thinking about, well, where's the human judgment that needs to come into this? Where is the human kind of augmenting what's been created, critiquing what's been created? And that's, I think, a really key area for research at the moment in terms of education. This is a kind of table that I often use with my students, looking at AI and Gen AI and just basically comparing what kind of AI does and then what Gen AI does. So Google Translate, for example, is AI, but we wouldn't say it's Gen AI necessarily. It's taking what you're giving it, and then it's basically giving you that meaning back in a different language. It's not necessarily generating original outputs from the beginning. So we wouldn't say that's Gen AI. So yeah, that kind of content creation is where we're starting to see a lot of apps become very sophisticated. And then that's starting to bring into those questions around human agency, critical analysis of that, and also why universities and other institutions are really trying to keep up, thinking about, well, what does that mean for assessment? So for pre-service teachers, how do we actually assess what they are bringing into the task, and how do we assess how they've used Gen AI? So you see lots of research on AI the way that it was, prior, or kind of not so much the Gen AI as much, around these personalized learning pathways. So I did a study on this with my colleague Josh Matthews, who's at University of New England, and we looked at some of the AI powered platforms like Duolingo, for example, and they just use machine learning to think about what the user is putting into, how they're performing on different vocabulary and grammar exercises, etc. And they have the speech recognition technology, so it kind of provides back to you how well you've done, and based on that, it then predicts and takes you into different kinds of learning experiences, the next level, or repeats a similar level, etc. So research questions around this kind of area ask things like, look, how can these sort of basically adaptive algorithm systems predict learner needs and personalize content sequencing? Where are the strengths of this approach, and where are the kind of restrictions? And so my colleague Josh and I did a study back in 2019 where we recruited language teachers, so English language teachers, but also other languages, Japanese, French. And basically we had them use different apps like Duolingo and think about, okay, task-based language learning is a framework that we're all very familiar with. It's one of those kind of key conceptual frameworks around how we are motivated to use language in an integrated way to achieve a particular function or task. And so we asked them to think about their experiences with these apps, these language apps and think about, okay, where are the opportunities to think about this as a task, and where are the constraints where it just isn't integrated? It feels like a decontextualized or individual experience. And so we kind of basically made some suggestions out of that around how we can better align language learning app design to the principles of task-based language teaching. The trick with that is we didn't have the technology in 2019 to see where that could actually be possible. Now, of course, with generative AI, with that other kind of element of creation, that could actually be much more possible. And that's what we're starting to see. But this is an example of an earlier kind of where we were looking more at just AI implications. So real-time feedback is something that comes out as a real strength of AI. So rather than waiting for feedback from a teacher who has a class of 30 or 50 or wherever you're teaching, your numbers, I've got that personalized real-time feedback with me. Some of the learners we've talked to in our own research have talked about things like having a teacher in my phone. There's also the apps that you can get where you actually pick, it's just a chat bot, but you pick who my teacher is going to be. So you pick the avatar, you pick the whatever, and you tell them, okay, these are my interests. I'm interested in, I don't know, mechanics, cars or something, I don't know. And so they try and tailor the language learning exercises to the area of interest. I mean, this is all the work of language educators, right? You're trying to hook what they're learning to something that's interesting to them, to make it communicative, etc. So there's a lot of that kind of those sorts of apps available, and a lot of research going on to that in terms of, okay, can somebody learn a whole language without ever having a human language educator, either formally or informally? Because you can be taught by friends, you can be taught by, it doesn't have to be a formal thing, it just has to be an experience where someone is apprenticing you into and scaffolding your engagement with increasingly more complex aspects of the language. So research on tools like Grammarly, for example, or Write and Improve, basically what's the accuracy, what's the pedagogical impacts of that AI generated feedback compared to human feedback for student language? We're starting to see some interesting things in the research, although it's still in the embryonic phase, as we get more and more complex and sophisticated Gen AI affordances and applications. But lots of times people are talking about having that kind of real-time feedback, having that sort of sense of being empowered, not having to rely on someone else, not having to, if you like, ask your question in front of a whole class, but you feel like you can kind of get that assessment, that feedback, etc., to yourself as an individual. So it's really changing a little bit about how we think of ourselves as learners and the role of teachers. However, there's also a lot of feedback saying that nothing can really compare to the human feedback when you're thinking about cultural nuances, when you're thinking about cultural appropriacy, the social or the pragmatic elements of language use. Maybe these kinds of tools are really good for the syntactical elements, those kinds of, but in fact, more broadly, when we start thinking about social cultural issues is where they kind of perhaps fall down. Justin Bass has got a really interesting chapter in this book. There's other studies as well that look at this idea of learners' views around all of this kind of, so AI in giving feedback. In this case, it was in writing, but there's something for every macro skill or element of language learning. And it's this idea of, okay, there are advantages, but then learners are also coming to the point where that human element, knowing me, knowing who I am as a learner and what I need to achieve, where I am, the cultural, the local element is missing for a lot of these learners. But there's some really interesting research coming out around this. And so, yes, the access to authentic language input via AI-generated dialogue and text. So there's a lot of studies looking at using ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever to create conversational scenarios for ESL, EFL learners. But there's a lot of also questions around, are learners actually seeing, so if they put in their own text into, say, ChatGPT, and they ask the system to write them something that's more fluent, grammatically correct, etc.? Are they seeing the difference between those two? Are they learning or understanding the difference between them? Or are they just taking what comes out and going, okay, well, that's a better version, and not really analyzing it or critically thinking about it? So in that case, they're not really using it as a tool. They're just taking the answer. And so a lot of research is now happening around how is learner engagement and language development impacted when you're getting that kind of real-time AI-generated information versus a traditional textbook, which cannot possibly hope to be as individual for every single learner. You know, we have something that everybody uses from the textbook and they will engage with it in different ways. AI generated dialogues, for example, if that's the example we're using, you know, can be depending on the prompts you give it, they can be targeted to particular ways or particular needs of that individual learner. But the question is, are the learners just taking this as the answer, or are they actually learning from it and seeing where the differences are between what they're put through, etc.? So there's some really interesting studies. I've put a few there on the slides that you might want to look at as well, thinking about, okay, it all sounds great and people sort of rush to Gen AI to help them, but then there are areas where, like I said, this kind of cultural, social nuancing, and also the actual use of it as a tool to learn, or the use of it as a tool to just get an answer, that's where we need to know more about how students are using this and how they're understanding this kind of technology. So research questions, you know, around how we're reshaping learner autonomy and engagement. So how are teacher roles and professional identity shifting? Do these tools empower learners to take greater control? So are learners using it, I suppose, the way we hope they will as language educators, which is comparing what they've put into it to the response that's come out, thinking about where the differences are. This clause is different, that vocabulary is different, it's organized differently, you know, the tenses are changed. Do they look at that level of detail, or they just take the answer and go with the answer? So that's where we need to find out a little bit more, and that's where the research that I've undertaken is starting to look at that with particular cohorts. Does the integration of AI tools help them engage more deeply, interactively, or does it risk reducing that critical thinking, and it becomes this over-reliance on, I'll just put the answer in and I'll get the answer out kind of thing? And does AI enhanced teaching impact teachers' perceptions of their own identity is a really key area. Who are we if we've got this other tool that students are using? Where is the role of the educator in all of this? What is it that the human's bringing that's different? So AI integration can really challenge traditional teacher roles, and this has come very much out of the research that I've undertaken with colleagues. Teachers are starting to see themselves in that critical space as kind of brokers or curators, critically evaluating AI-generated content and helping their learners to also learn how to be critical and to engage in ways that ask those big questions about what's produced. And actually, pleasingly, in a lot of our research, we found that a lot of learners, although it's not been part of their formal education, they're starting to do that critical thinking themselves. And I'll give you some examples. So increasingly, we're investigating how teachers negotiate their own identity when they have this tool to help with instructional decisions. And how they're thinking about, okay, well, what am I bringing? What expertise do I need to bring to make sure that this sort of largely algorithmic tool has produced this, but is it appropriate for my learners, given their context, given their needs, etc.? So where is the knowledge coming in from educators? So the second part of what I wanted to talk to you today about is a sort of bit of a focus on my research. So the context is English language learning and teaching with students who've been displaced from their countries of origin. So they've been forcibly displaced due to war or poverty or a humanitarian crisis. They are not migrants by choice, they're migrants by circumstance. So you know, they don't know where they're going. And they often go through really traumatic and you know, terrible disadvantages by the time they get to where they're moving to. And so learners with forced migration backgrounds have usually have very little time to prepare. This is not a planned migration. So when they've come to Australia, they've had little time to learn English usually. They often have quite disrupted educational trajectories. So they're not, oftentimes war or other humanitarian crises have meant that they haven't had the chance to be in the classroom, or they've been born in refugee camps and there hasn't been, that formal educational presence. And they often have really complex health issues, malnutrition, other injuries, things like that. Also, when you arrive in these circumstances, there's an immediate need to get work and to start working. Oftentimes, people have significant care responsibilities. Families are often separated or impacted by war, etc. So there's oftentimes very little time to learn English even after resettlement. So, and then the other key thing we see with learners from refugee or displaced backgrounds is that they often have significant trauma. And we know that anybody can experience trauma, and that impacts cognitive load, it impacts short-term memory, it impacts language acquisition, and also our sense of safety and willingness to kind of engage in classroom learning as well. So my research agenda, I work with a number of different colleagues here and in different countries, looking at how AI-mediated learning environments might incorporate trauma-informed practices. So when we think what is trauma-informed language education, you might have heard of this. It's trauma-informed education is basically an approach to teaching and learning that recognizes that trauma might impact. Not all of our learners come to the classroom with the same level of anxiety. Some have language learning anxiety, which is really just, focused on using a foreign language and feeling, anxious around that. And that's one thing, but others come with real trauma that creates a kind of sense of anxiety across their whole lives, cognitive, emotional, social, etc. They often feel unsafe and they need a supportive and responsive learning environment. So how can AI help us with those kinds of things? It might seem like a strange question because AI not being kind of human, how does that support what is a very human need? But our research is showing some really interesting things. So this is a chapter that I published with my colleague Tatiana Bogashenko from Edith Cowan University in Australia. And we looked at working with learners who talked about, this is a quote, "This is our safe space." That's a quote from one of the learners who'd come from war and found the digital space and online communities really helpful for learning language. They felt very they were very hesitant to engage in a classroom environment. They felt shy, they felt worried, they were scared. Having these digital tools gave them time to get feedback individually or in a small group and gave them the confidence to kind of be part of something bigger in the classroom. And we've also done a similar study with other colleagues where we looked at Google Translate for these purposes. And as I said, Google Translate is not Gen AI, but it does actually seem to have a lot of the same kinds of confidence and sense of safety. People feel like they have a tool in their hands that they can try something, and then that can be a bridge to classroom communication in the ESL classroom. So it was a mixed methods research design. We did some I'm going to talk mostly about the qualitative elements today and give you qualitative data, but we did a survey and then we talked with language educators and we talked with English language learners from this particular background, and we asked them about Google Translate in English language learning. And what we got was really, really interesting. There were some commonalities, but mostly differences between the way that the educators viewed Google Translate and the way that the learners viewed Google Translate. And for us, this is a really important aspect of research that needs to continue. We need bigger research around this question, because if learners and teachers are looking at these tools very differently and using them very differently, there are all sorts of missed opportunities and potential misunderstandings that can occur. So, and then we analyze the qualitative data using reflexive thematic analysis, etc. And you can read about it in the paper in the chapter. The learner experiences coming out of the survey, they were very kind of clear that you had to have digital literacy as a foundation. You had to know how to use Google Translate critically and carefully and kind of verify the responses with other sources of information. If you just use what came out of Google Translate, there were inaccuracies. Some of them were, sometimes funny, but, there were mistakes or there were cultural gaps there and things like that. But Google Translate was very much talked about as a means of freedom, of confidence, of inclusion, of a tool that can help them feel as though they can participate more in the classroom. There was also this really strategic uptake that showed a critical awareness, and they really kind of were also very aware about some of the ethical issues around linguistic dominance and so forth. So from the survey, most people used Google Translate for individual words, translating individual words, so that a lot of them weren't really using it to take, the photo of the whole whiteboard and translate the image into the first language, although some were. Some people were using it for those longer phrases and sentences, but they talked very much about its helpfulness in vocab acquisition, particularly. Outside the classroom, the learners used it to communicate with English speakers, to do with their work-related tasks was interesting, their homework, other study, shopping, things like that. 21 people out of the 26 were very positive. Yes, Google Translate helps me learn English. One of them said no, it doesn't, and 4 of them said it's unsure. So it's interesting because previous research suggested that learners use Google Translate, but they didn't really think it helped them learn language. So this goes back to my point earlier about, are they just using the tool to get an answer, or are they using the tool to help them learn, to say, how is the answer I've gotten different to what I put in? Where are the differences in grammar and vocabulary and organization, etc.? So previously, research suggested mostly that learners thought it probably wasn't helping them learn, but it was helping them get by and survive in the language. Our learners were pretty sure it was helping them learn. They talked very kind of positively about the convenience of it, the speed, the availability, the ease of use. They rated the accuracy lower, which was really interesting. And every learner gave us examples of when things were wrong or inaccurate, or they couldn't use it with slang, or they couldn't use it, those sorts of things. One of the kind of key elements that came up was that learners needed to be proficient in digital literacy. And oftentimes, actually, none of the learners had had any training in digital literacy inside their language learning classroom. It was acquired mostly by trial and error. So Natalka talked about, we learned it somehow, just clicking trial and error. Others talked about they were more advanced than their language educators in terms of understanding the technology. So I was the only student in my course who studied with the help of Google Translate, even the lecturer when he saw it. And when my classmates saw it, they were like, wow, what is it? How does it work? They were amazed at how I do it. And my children at school use Google Translate. And for the teachers, it was also their first such experience. So you can see that the learners are actually coming in using these tools in their outside life, but actually not finding that other people know about them or use them in the classroom. For these students, very much Google Translate was this means of freedom, of confidence, of inclusion. Natalka talked about, when we came to Australia, it was 3 months after the war. We hadn't prepared, we hadn't studied English. So when we arrived, it was very, very difficult and scary for us. And when I realized that I could use Google Translate, I had all of these fears and discomforts and all of these feelings of insecurity. They all disappeared. Yes, I had Google Translate in my hands. It's as if my ears opened and I was able to translate things and ask questions. So here you see this being used, like I said before, as a bridge. Also really helping to, calm some of those fears and anxieties, but also to actually help people engage more in the language. It was also a really strategic uptake. So Svetlana talked about, in her classroom, you're not allowed to use Google Translate. But if you ask for a dictionary, they'll give it to you. And she's saying, but when you're trying to look it up in a dictionary, it's taking time. You're missing out on what the teacher's saying. But so it's much more helpful actually if you can use a tool like that rather than using a dictionary. And then Marthi talked about, in Australia, there are many different languages. And so if you meet someone who's also learning English, Google Translate can help you. You can bridge that gap. If your English and their English, you're still developing it, you can use Google Translate if you don't share a first language. And then we had all sorts of examples of where the learners were really critical. So Natalka, for example, I think my answer was more appropriate. Not that Google Translate was incorrect. They would understand me if I used the suggested wording, but it wasn't the most appropriate translation in response to what my interlocutor asked about. So for me, this is this really high level, okay, I'm verifying it. When we ask the students, how do you verify the response you get from Google Translate? Well, they go and Google more broadly. They ask people, they look at their textbook, they think about what they've learned in class. So they're trying to verify the accuracy. And that's a really high level kind of human engagement with the tool that I think is really promising. And then other students talked about, some of those ethical issues regarding, linguistic domination. There are less frequently spoken languages that are just not there. And there's also only one version of English in Google Translate. So when you have an accent or a dialect like Australian English, you oftentimes you can't translate everything because the dialect is different. So it's privileging certain dialects. And this person, Svetlana, I just stopped using Google Translate when native speakers, especially some young people, start using phrasal verbs. Google doesn't understand it. So you can see, that there's that critical use. Educator experiences were very interesting. They talked about, look, we can use it selectively in the classroom, especially when there are communication breakdowns, but we shouldn't be using it all of the time. They talked about, so for instance, Angela talked about, look, if someone really doesn't understand something, the fastest route to getting them to understand is Google Translate. I'll use it then. I'll get them to translate it on their phone. But there was, important messages and things like that. But there was a concern that over-reliance on Google Translate might impact the learner's engagement. So Angela said that she would never discourage the use of it, but she thinks less is better. To advise we shouldn't overuse it. Maria was another teacher who talked about, using an English dictionary is better for deepening yourself in the language atmosphere, because if you switch from one language to another, you won't start thinking in the foreign language. Educators also kind of, really, some of them modeled the practices with Google Translate. So using the camera function, putting it on the whiteboard, on the smartboard, so everybody can see how they look at it, and then telling them, okay, here's the big picture. Now go and look at the English word, memorize it, read it, write it, and so forth. But educators worried that students might feel more supported, which is great, when they use Google Translate, but they worried that they wouldn't take risks with the language. They would rely on the technology rather than actually actively taking risks and integrating and using language. And so there was that kind of difference. So Bin talked about, look, if they don't understand, they'll be panicked. If they don't feel comfortable, they can't learn. So if they feel more confident, I'm very happy with Google Translate. But others were concerned that over-reliance might prevent learners from taking risks. So basically what we saw was this kind of really interesting. For learners, it was a means of decentralizing language learning spaces. It was self-directed. They didn't rely on it. They used it as a tool to engage more in the classroom and more comfortably. And they were also quite critical about representation and absence of different varieties of English and things like that. The educators and the learners, though, had quite different perceptions. There were these contrasts about sense of confidence and freedom versus risk-taking and engagement. So this suggests a need for much more research that explores those kinds of misalignments to AI in language education, particularly for these cohorts that are traditionally underrepresented and have, particular needs. So in the last kind of 2 minutes, that brings us to the final kind of phase of the presentation, I guess, which is these ongoing issues and challenges and questions. So one is about these issues of how we use these tools. So in our study, we're seeing very different understandings of these tools from learners and teachers. We need to think about that. How do we balance that kind of human agency, that engagement with this? What are teachers bringing? How do we capture that knowledge, that human knowledge, that critical thinking, and how do we help our students learn that? There are also, ethical considerations around bias. We talked about different dialects, etc., equity concerns, and data privacy, etc. So there's lots more future research needed on longitudinal impacts around this stuff. So we need to kind of be really aware that when we have accent, recognition, oftentimes it will correct an issue of dialect rather than an issue of fluency or accuracy in pronunciation. And what does that mean about diversity of language? We need to be careful about that. We need to support students to have equitable access to things. Some people can't have private tuition through tools like ChatGPT or Copilot. Maybe they have more engagement with language learning if they have an internet connection and they have access. But also thinking about preservation of diversity as well as access. Not all languages are documented or widely published. Published materials often only exist for standard varieties of language, so we need to be thinking about that. And we often have AI detectors that are discriminating against English language learners because their language looks AI generated, because they're using very formal structures, because that's what they're learning in the classroom. So there's all of those kinds of ethical considerations as well. And I talked a little bit about accent modification. So speech recognition technology often, and there's this kind of promotion of accent modification. It often promotes standardized norms. So if you're learning English, it doesn't usually promote an Australian English accent, for example. It will privilege the more privileged dialects of English. What does that mean in terms of our ongoing kind of linguistic diversity and issues of identity and social and cultural kind of considerations? So there's a whole heap of key research on that as well that you can take from the slides if you're interested. So basically I want to kind of conclude by saying that yes, AI is a catalyst for change. It's transforming language education and therefore language educational research. There are lots of opportunities and there are lots of key kinds of areas and questions that have become more and more sort of pertinent the more sophisticated Gen AI becomes. But there are also these kinds of key challenges that we need to keep in mind. These issues around, being critical and using it as a tool rather than AI driving language education, I think is one of the most important. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel, for the insightful presentation. And I want to conclude a little about what Rachel already present. That she already give us more remind about what is the differences between AI and generative AI, where AI analyze learning data to support instructions such as Google Translate, Duolingo, while generative AI creates new language content that can enhance learning tasks such as ChatGPT. And along this with benefits, we must remain alert to bias, equity issues, and responsible data use. Even if AI can give a feedback, the human capacity, such as the feedback for the culture or pragmatism, it can be replaced by the AI itself. Okay, thank you so much, Rachel, for the insightful presentation. And the next speaker is Ibu Dr. Hajah Nurmaudiah, MA. The time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. It's so clear.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, once again, I would like to welcome my kind and beautiful supervisor, Rachel Bird, and I'm happy having you here today. So allow me to share my screen So I'll just give a very short presentation, and then we may open the question and answer session. Okay. So, screen. Yeah, so today I'm going to explain a bit about the responsible use of artificial intelligence in research and writing. Sorry.
Ini materi apa ini sekarang ini?
Okay. So if you see the slide here, so as you can see, there's a date, the 30th November 2022. And there is a caption mentioned the day the word changed. So what do you think? What does it remind you? Okay, so on November the 30th, 2022, ChatGPT was launched, and by San Francisco-based OpenAI, the creator of the initial GPT series of large language models. A diffusion model used to generate images and whisper a speech transcription model. Okay, now, and let me ask the audience, when generate AI ChatGPT rapidly emerged in late or in November 2022, what was your first reaction? Could you please participate here so you can scan this QR code, or you can go to slido.com and write this number. Yeah. So how do you feel, or what was your first reaction? Did you feel excited, curious, worried, confused, afraid, or you have other feelings? Okay, so let me see. So, all right, curious?
Excited.
Yes. Confused? Okay. Okay, other answers. So most of the answers being curious, all right. Okay, yeah, so that's interesting. Yeah, so most of you were curious, yeah, to know about this ChatGPT. Yeah, so it's as I said, it emerged in November 2022. It means that it's already 3 years, yeah, since then. Okay, what about me? So for me, at that time, I felt very worried actually. Yeah, so I was worried and also confused. And why? Because at that time, when I did my PhD thesis, my topic was something about related to source-based writing, and in the part of my PhD thesis was related to artificial intelligence used in source-based writing. And when ChatGPT came or emerged, I was confused, or because I needed to finish my thesis, but I didn't have the time to opportunity to explore more about this ChatGPT. So I was really confused and also worried about the future, actually, the future of writing, academic writing instruction. Okay. So So the emergence of a large language model or LLM and generative AI initially met with reluctance. Okay, so why I said that because me myself I was reluctant. So it took me like 1 year to accept the emergence of ChatGPT. So I was reluctant to use ChatGPT because um, I was worried. I was worried about the future of the writing or academic writing instruction. So I was reluctant, yeah, and I can see that also other scholars, other researchers also were reluctant, yeah, particularly within the field of academic writing instruction. So what do you mean by large language model? A large language model, LLM, is a type of artificial intelligence, AI, that is trained on massive amounts of text data to understand, generate, and process human language. So this AI excels at tasks like summarizing text, translating language, answering questions, and creating content. So that's the function of the ChatGPT that emerged. And I'm also glad to hear from Rachel that she raised that question. Yeah. So what is the difference between artificial intelligence and generative AI? Because ChatGPT is generative AI. Generative AI is a type of artificial intelligence that create new content such as text, images, and audio by learning patterns from massive data sets. Okay. So this is what we need to worry about. So that was what I was worried about because of the emergence of this generative AI. So when it emerged within the months of its introduction on November 30th, 2022, ChatGPT had 100 million weekly users. By late 2025, so as I said, it's 3 years now, that figure had grown to 800 million. And that makes it one of the most widely used consumer technologies on the planet. And this is not only a theory, but actually I did a research, yeah, on the did a research where I asked the students what generative AI that they mostly use. So the response was ChatGPT. So that's the most frequently used generative AI by the students, yes, particularly in academic writing. And so this is not a theory, but this is proven by research and previous studies as well. So despite the reservation expressed by some teachers or lecturers or researchers, ChatGPT has become, or generative AI, yeah, as general, has become increasingly evident that universities are integrating AI tools into their academic practices. Okay, so we as educators, we are as lecturers, teachers, we cannot say no to the students not to use a generative AI in their research or academic writing, because it's evident, yeah. So the students are increasingly incorporating artificial intelligence into their learning practices in various ways. So this is a study conducted by Black and Tomlinson in 2025, and they mentioned that based on the result of their study, that the students use artificial intelligence, particularly the generative AI, in different ways, whether they use it as summarizing text or translating text. Okay, so different ways using artificial intelligence. So we don't actually neglect the fact that these technologies have potential. So as Rachel said or presented just now about the potential opportunities, yeah, for the use of artificial intelligence. So the technologies have potential to enhance students' learning experiences. And from Rachel's presentation, we know that AI or artificial intelligence can be used for giving feedback and or other functions, yeah. So this development highlights the importance for educators and researchers to gain a thorough understanding of AI, including both its opportunities and associated risks, as well as how students interact with these tools. Such insights are essential for guiding the students toward the responsible and meaningful use of AI technology, specifically in research and academic writing. So, as I said, I was reluctant actually to use AI in my teaching or in doing research, in conducting research. But when I saw that many students are actually even when you tell them not to use AI, they apparently use AI. And because of that, we need to change our thought and try to think of the opportunities and also about the risk, how to minimize if there's any ethical problems or issues related to the use of artificial intelligence. Okay, now I list some of the responsible use of artificial intelligence. As you can see, the first is transparency. Okay, so when you use AI, you need to be transparent. What does it mean, transparent or transparency? Transparency means that you need to mention when and how and why you use AI. For example, when so the course that I teach is academic writing in English Language Education Department. So when every time because it's writing, so it means that the students are asked to write drafts, and of course they have the final project of writing with that research proposal or any writing academic writing task. So the first thing I ask is that they need to disclose what AI they use. And yeah, so they transparent about it. Yeah, so they convey that they use, for example, ChatGPT in writing their assignment. So, and I asked them as well to be transparent to in what way they use AI, and also why did they use AI. So this kind of transparency is very important when you conducting research or writing any types of academic writing. And the next term is or concept we have here, critical evaluation. So it means that if we write or I ask the students to write a text or to write their final project, they need to evaluate. For example, if they use ChatGPT, they need to evaluate critically, and they need to critically think about the result of the ChatGPT's response, yeah, for example, to their answer. So it doesn't mean that, of course, when the students used ChatGPT, that they copy the result, but they need to evaluate what the AI or the ChatGPT or any other generative AI respond. Yeah. So other generative AI, we have Gemini, and I know from the students that they use Perplexity, and they use Black Box. Yeah. So this kind of generative AI, because that was the first thing that in my academic writing course I asked. That's the first thing that I asked the students. Yeah. So what kind of AI they use. And the next point is avoiding plagiarism and fabrication. Yeah, so this is very important. So when the students do their task using generative AI, not to copy paste, of course, not to copy paste 100% from the artificial intelligence, yeah, because that is considered plagiarism. Even when I did my PhD thesis, and I explained about the use of artificial intelligence in source-based writing, there was no actually uh, ChatGPT or Gemini yet, but there was Quillbit, yeah, and even Quillbit, the use of the students' use of Quillbit is considered actually plagiarism if they use that unethically, yeah. So we need not to copy from the response of the ChatGPT. And of course, we avoid fabrication because we need to be aware. We need to be cautious about because sometimes when we use ChatGPT or any other generative AI, it's it gives false response. So we need to be aware of that. Okay, and yeah, so the next point is about intellectual contribution. So what I mean by this for intellectual contribution is that we don't rely, yeah, so no over reliance on generate ChatGPT or any other generative AI. Yeah, so we cannot just rely on the response of the ChatGPT. So we need to give our intellectual contribution. We need to give our point of view. Yeah. And yeah, so what based on our critical thinking. And the other point is about proper acknowledgement of AI tools. So this is again about the disclosing or being transparent. Yeah, so giving acknowledgement of AI tools, especially when we write in journal articles or in in the journals, sometimes they have that section of acknowledgement of AI tools, so we need to acknowledge in what way we use AI and what is the function of AI, whether it's for checking our grammar or is it for so usually in writing, so we need to of course we need to check our revise or edit our grammar. So usually ChatGPT is used for for correcting or refining our text. And probably this is the last point related to responsible use of AI. So it's about aligning with institutional policies. Of course, you need to follow the institutional policies if they have the policy of using artificial intelligence. This is probably the different policies in different universities, but we need to follow that the policies. Okay, so this is as a concluding statement, as probably similar to what Rachel conveyed just now, that artificial intelligence offers many benefits to researchers. However, its use must follow ethical, transparent, and academically sound principles. So the goal is to ensure that AI supports research without replacing human intellectual contribution. Okay, so this is my presentation, and thank you very much. And I'm happy to to receive the questions from the audience. Thank you very much. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, Ibu Nur Maudia, for the insightful presentation. And I will conclude that her presentation about the responsible for using AI, and don't forget to be awareness, because sometimes AI like ChatGPT give false or wrong about the prompt that we send itself. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, after the presentation from the speakers, now we are in the discussion and questions and answer section. If you have any question, if you are in the Zoom, please can you raise your hands on? You can write your questions in chat box. Okay, first.
Can I have question?
Okay, there are two questions. The first is by Dana Kristiawan. If you have any question, can you unmute your audio?
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. It's nice to see you here, and Lydia.
It's great to see you. Yes.
Yeah, it's very new enlightenment for the fresh idea of research put of Lydia and Rachel's, and yeah, at least we can do a replicable idea in an Indonesian context, which is multicultural. And the idea for Rachel, that's very exciting, that combining psychology effect, trauma, and it's linked with my research interests on peace educations. My question is simple. I need your perspective of Lydia and Rachel. What is your predictions of artificial in the futures based on this evidence recently, and what do you think? What do you think the effect on the language teachings? And yeah, I need your perspective of the futures predictions of AI. Thank you.
Good question. Wow. Lydia, do you want to go first?
Yeah, you can go first.
Okay. I mean, I think part of what's so exciting, and I was one of the people that put curious down as my response when ChatGPT was kind of became open and a thing. I think one of the things that are exciting about the whole field is the fact that we really don't know. I mean, there's got to be a certain point at which we think, well, I don't think AI will be able to do that, for instance. But we don't know, because it depends on this increasingly sophisticated affordances of the technology. I think the key thing that I'm looking forward to, which I think will come sooner rather than later, is this really kind of clear articulation of what it is that teachers bring to language learning, language acquisition that is different to what AI can bring. So where are the kinds of judicious evaluations? Where is that critical, okay, what you've given me is really good, but I need to tailor it for my specific learners, their specific context, this specific situation for this person. So what's the kind of human element? I think that's what we're going to see with all of the increasingly, chatbots and there'll be, kind of teaching that will happen, that with some of the lower order stuff that will be taken off our load as educators. And I think this continued opening up of language learning opportunities, this personalized, accessible kind of engagement. But at the same time, there will be a parallel kind of real articulation and understanding that when you are a language educator, this is what you bring. Because we've done so much of that other work in the previous kind of years before this technology. What's the work that can be taken on and what's the work that can't? And that's a kind of shared research agenda that I think we'll see sooner rather than later really, really becoming something that's debated in the field. Yeah.
Thank you, Rachel.
Great question, though.
Thank you, Rachel, for the answer. So it concludes that the teachings, learning language in the future, it can be the debating for the ChatGPT or AI era in the future, right? And the next will be Ibu Nurmaudia will answer the question.
Okay, thank you very much for the time and say hi to Padana. So Padana was my colleague back then. Yeah, and we did our PhD in the same university. Okay, all right. So related to your question, so as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, that when ChatGPT emerged in November 2022, I was really reluctant and afraid to use that Gen AI. And as I mentioned, I spent like 1 year to think. So after I went back to Indonesia and started teaching my students, I spent like 1 year thinking about whether I need to integrate AI in my teaching or not. So it's like 1 year spent to think about it. Yeah. So and then when I realized that it's growing rapidly, so and we cannot say no to the students not to use AI. But of course, we need to be aware. We need to learn about. There's something probably all of you know. There's something called the EI literacy. So we need not only me, but all the teachers, all the English language education lecturers, researchers need to know about EI literacy, and or they need to have EI literacy. And other than that, we have a digital literacy. So we need to be aware of the ethical and the responsible use of AI, because, as I said, it's growing rapidly, and so I became, now probably this is so I integrate Gen AI in my teaching. Yeah, as I conveyed earlier, that when I teach academic writing, I ask the students, it's okay to use AI, but they need to disclose what the AI they used, and the function or how they use it. And there was also an interesting research that I conducted with my students, is that comparing when I taught about summarizing Yeah, and that was the topic of my PhD research about the source-based writing and teaching summarizing. So when I asked the students to use EI, and after that they use the manual the manual summarization. So it means that without the use of EI, and I asked them to compare the result. And the result was interestingly that the students say that there is a difference. There's the difference in the result from EI, and also based on their reading and thinking to create a summary. And so there was a difference, and also they mentioned that when they want to be in depth, critically in depth, they need to read that manually. So yeah, so as Rachel said, it depends on the context, and also we need to it depends also on the students' ability to the context or the condition of the classroom itself. Okay, I hope that I answered your question.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Great answers.
Thank you, Ibu Nurmalidia, and thank you, Bapak Dana Kristiawan, for the question. And for the next question is from Ibu Andi Irlina. Ibu Andi, please unmute your audio.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, actually, Ibu Maulidia has answered some of my question, but I think I still want to ask question because my question refers to both of the speaker. As Miss Rachel Burke said that as a tool, AI has become very useful for all of us, not only the students, but also the educator. But for example, it can help learners acquire English easily, recognize languaging, teaching students different dialect or varieties, whatever. And also, it broad field of education, evolving mechanic to transform tests requiring human-like intelligence. Well, actually, my question is even Ibu Maulidia has answered the trick or the way they solve my question here is because it's referred to the writing. Yeah, I teach another subject, so in the context of the students increasingly relying on AI tool for assignment, for example, like when we give the student the project based article or creative test or something like that. As a lecturer, how can we encourage the genuine critical thinking and original input from students? Maybe the speaker have some strategies that can we use to ensure they are not just copying from AI, but actually developing their ideas. Yeah, I think Ibu Maudia has give some trick about that, but I think for the case of writing, it's okay. But for the case like my study, my subject, it is about, for example, prose and language pedagogy or social linguistics and others. Okay, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Ibu Andi Irlina, for the questions. And it's time to Rachel and Ibu Maulidia to answer the question.
Sure. Well, I mean, another really great question, and I think this is partly what AI is doing is forcing us or encouraging us, but kind of forcing us as university professors to think about what is it that I need from my students. So what is it that makes you're teaching in sociolinguistics and this kind of language acquisition theory, etc. What do I need the people in my class to know to become professionals in this field? So what can't, what do I need to make sure they have that they're not relying on AI for, I guess. So AI in terms of, its impact on assessment at a university level is really encouraging us all to think really clearly about what are the key things that people need to be able to do, and what are the things that maybe AI can help with. And I think Lydia's answer was really helpful in as much as I do a lot of work with my students looking at, rather than saying, don't use it, it's forbidden and all of that sort of stuff. How can we use AI as a tool? So Lydia's example was to say, if we put in something around language acquisition, for example, and we asked AI to give us, some responses, and then I would ask my students, okay, this is the response. I want you to critique it. I want you to tell me where the tensions or the gaps are in terms of this theory of language acquisition. So if we're talking about, behaviorist theories of language acquisition or innatist theories or whatever, where are the tensions? Where are the gaps? Where are the problems? Where are the unsolved kinds of questions? So we can take what has been produced by AI, but I want to see that kind of layer of higher order thinking. Similar to, I often say to my students, okay, this is the case study, we're working with this classroom of students. If you want to develop a language acquisition program of learning using AI, take that generic thing, but then I want to see how you will adjust it, how you will bring your understanding of differentiation, how you will bring your understanding of local, social, and cultural context, how you will bring all of that in and actually adjust. And at this point, I don't find that AI is able to do those things very well. And that's the kind of stuff that I want to assess for my own students, to make sure if they're going to be applied linguists or whatever they're going to be, that they have that kind of core content knowledge, I think is really important. Any of us can ask AI to give us a list of instructions for anything. If it's not our area of expertise, it seems fine. I don't know. I guess I'll do that. What an expert would come in and say, sure, some of that's okay, but you need to change this or you need to change that. This needs to be adapted, that needs to be amended, etc. You really want to have tasks that focus on that level of expertise. So for me, it's things like, trying to get them to do case studies, critical incident analysis, correcting things, giving them samples of students' work and asking them to think through that based on what they know about language acquisition in sort of live assessment, in a kind of lockdown sort of format, so that they can use AI to help with some things, but the core things that they need to be able to be a professional in that field, those are the things we're assessing. But I think it's a great question, and I think it is a becoming space. We're still learning. What do you think, Lydia?
I agree with you, Rachel. So probably I suggest that thank you first of all to Ibu Andi for your question. In terms of teaching sociolinguistics, I think you can encourage the students or ask the students to have activities based on their experiences. So you ask the students to have some activities, critical activities based on their experience. So that's what I can think of here, because I know that it is not academic writing, but it's kind of linguistics. So having an activity in the classroom based on their experience, and also if you can also give with that an activity that is done by group, so they can work together and try to present what they think of. For example, if you ask the students to analyze or review an article related to sociolinguistics. So that's my simple answer for that.
Okay, thank you very much, Miss Maulidia and Miss Rachel, for the time and information, and I tried it. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Andi Irlina, for the questions, and Rachel and Ibu Moldia for the answer. So the answer concluded for sociolinguistics from Rachel is there is language acquisition, and it cannot get or develop from the AI itself. So it can be help the student for their critical thinking, and for the Ibu Moldia is show the student giving the experience that their students own experiences is not get from the AI itself. Thank you, Rachel and Ibmolia. And for the next question, please raise your hands on text on chat box. Participants. Okay, there's one question from Lisa Sadikin and Zikri Ramadan. First, Lisa Sadikin, please unmute your audio to deliver your question.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, hello, Dr. Rachel and Ibu Lydia, our beloved
Ibu Lisa
lecturer.
Sadikin, yes.
Yes, I'm really glad to have you today for sharing amazing presentations. Thank you very much for a brilliant insight. I'm really sorry for not being able to open my camera because I have some technical issues related to my camera. All right, my name is Lisa Martalina Sadikin. I'm a student of English Master Program. In this opportunity, I would like to ask a questions about the use of AI in helping graduate students to understand academic text related, maybe because Ibu Lydia mentioned it earlier before in her explanation. Because in our master program, most of our study is related to scholarly journal articles. And based on my recent observations, many graduate students rely on AI tools to summarize and interpret academic articles because these tools provide quick results, save time, improve efficiency, and simplify complex terminology and reduce our cognitive load. But however, I realize that my personal experience, such assistance might actually limit our engagement in deep and critical reading processes, right? So from your perspective, how can actually AI use as effective scaffolding or temporary support in language education without fostering over-reliance or reducing students' higher order thinking skills? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lisa Sadikin, for the questions. And please, Rachel or Ibu Maulia, give the answer for Lisa's questions.
Do you want to go first, Lydia, this time? It's a great question again. These are really,
Yeah.
really good questions.
Yes, you
Yeah.
can answer first. Right.
Me? Okay.
Yeah, all right.
I love this question as well. There's a really, really practical kind of uses of AI that our students are doing. You're absolutely right, Lisa. You know, it's this, asking ChatGPT, Copilot, whatever, what are the key points of this article? What are the key, what does this part mean, or something like that? People are using this all the time for that. And you've rightly pointed out that part of the worry about that is the same as the way we have a concern with language learning more broadly. If I'm asking any kind of AI, Google Translate or whatever, if I'm asking, what does this word mean in Spanish or whatever, and it tells me, if I just take the answer, it's very similar to saying, Lydia, what is this article about? Okay, I'll just take the answer. If Lydia is able to say to me, I think it's about this, and I go back and look at my notes and compare my reading and my colleagues' reading, that's when, there's more kind of understanding. If I ask somebody a question about what a word means in a language, but then I go back to look at the sentence and I think about the cues around it, and I'm developing my critical skills. So I've got an answer for what the word means, but how could I have solved that myself? I guess that's the kind of higher order thinking we don't want to lose. We don't want it to become, we just put information in, we get an answer, and then away we go. So the way that I work with my graduate students is that we all do a kind of, analysis of the article ourselves. We don't, the first thing I ask my students and colleagues is, how do you read academic writing? Is it word for word? Because if you're reading word for word, you're not going to keep up, right? So you're using all of your cues. What are the headings? What's the abstract? What does the conclusion say? You know, there's a set kind of recipe, if you like. There's a set way that academic articles are organized, and you need to know that. And so, you know, we start with those kinds of very practical strategies. But then we say, okay, we're all going to read this and we're all going to see what we thought were the key points. And then we're going to put it into Copilot or whatever and see what the AI says. And we're going to see where the differences are. So if AI points out a particular key point that we don't have in ours, why didn't we notice that? Why didn't we think it was that? Is that to do with our own background understanding? And then you start to see, I'm engaging with this text. The meaning is not in this text, is not the same for everybody. So when I read it, I bring my background experiences, my own understandings, my own ideas, my own intellect, my own critical thinking. And that's actually what academic engagement with literature is about. If we all read the same article and got the same thing out of it, it would be, you know, what's the point, right? We're drawing on, we're thinking about, we're being creative with this. And so I think using it as a tool to say, okay, it can help you with some keywords, or it can help you with, you know, some key points, but you still have to bring your own unique interpretation to the table. You still have to work with that text and use it as a comparative. Here's what AI said. Here's what I said. Here's what my colleague said. You know, there are different ways of engaging with this. And I think it's the same with anything. How can we use it as a learning tool rather than the answer? That's what I would suggest, but really great question. What do you think, Lydia? You've worked a lot on this kind of stuff through your PhD and then
Yeah, right.
your
Thank
profession
you.
now.
Thank you, Rachel, for your answer. And thank you to my students, Lisa. Yeah, so she's my student in the English language education master's program. So I totally agree with you, Rachel. And as I said earlier, so I conducted a research where I asked the students to use AI in summarizing an article that they read, or without reading first. Yeah, so I asked the students to just directly use AI, and then I asked them to read again that article and give or they write their own summaries using their own, you know, without the using of ChatGPT or any generative AI. And there was a difference. As I said, there was a difference. And those who read the article carefully, they realize that there is certain points that AI didn't, how to say that, they didn't get. So it means that AI actually summarize the articles, only the points, but if it doesn't go in depth. So that student, based on the answer or her response, that when she read that article carefully, she discovered that there is some interesting points that is not actually mentioned by AI. So so it means that you can use AI just for as a start, probably to help you understand the text. But after that, you need to read the result of the AI, and you need to compare it with your own. So, for example, you have one point that is stated by the AI, and then you go read that point again from the article, whether you discover something that you can argue about. So there comes your critical thinking. Yeah. So yes. So there should be a balance. Yeah. So you don't again, you don't rely on AI. You just You don't just accept the response of AI 100%, but you need to also include or integrate your interpretation or your own critique. Yeah, and I remember that when I did my PhD thesis, my PhD thesis was connecting reading and writing. So my thesis was not only about teaching writing, but my thesis was about connecting reading and writing. So it means that when you teach writing, it means that you need to teach reading as well. So you need to teach the students how to, we have probably everyone knows that there are skills in reading comprehension. So we need to teach them how to where's that the skills of reading comprehension such as skimming, scanning. So how they try to understand the topic sentence or the thesis statement. So as Rachel said, yeah, so we need to not take not we need not to read the article word by word, but we need to have that having or understanding the thesis statement or understanding the topic sentence of this of that article. Yeah, I hope that so this is satisfying answer. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rachel and Ibu Maulidia, for the answer. So the answers conclude that to reading scaffolding for the article, that about high order thinking skills, we should didn't read word by word, but the key point and also comparing our summary for reading with the students itself, and also we not focus on ChatGPT or AI itself, because sometimes AI didn't put the important point of the article itself. Okay, it's the conclusion for the answer. Lisa, thank you for the question. And the next questions from Zikri Ramadan. You can put your questions on the chat box or unmute your audio, Zikri.
Okay, thank you, the moderator, Miss Adinda, and also the presenter, Dr. Rachel, and Miss Dr. Lydia, my lecturer. Okay, so my question is specifically to the point that Miss Lydia mentioned about the way, the method of you to tell your student to I mean to tell them what AI they use and how much AI that they use in their writing task, or about how the way they use the AI and what type of AI that they use. Okay, so my question is, how do you make sure that your student didn't use 100% AI in their writing? Because even though we tell them not to use AI, or encourage them not to use AI, but sometimes uh, they don't listen about that. They still use AI when the deadline is near, and they don't know what to do, and they just copy from the AI. And then there is a website to check how much AI that the writing used, but I think the website is still not very accurate. And then yeah, so how do you make sure that they don't use 100% AI? I think that's my question. I'm interested to hear from Miss Dr. Lydia and Dr. Rachel Burke. Thank you.
Thank you, Zikri, for the question. So, Rachel and Maulidia, how do you make sure that the students didn't use AI 100% on their writing? So, thank you.
Okay, should I answer that first, Rachel?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, so thank you for the question again from my student again, Zikri. So yeah, so your question was how to make sure that the students are not using EI 100%, yeah, in my academic writing course. So actually, I asked them to present. I asked them to present what they have written. I don't know, probably there are some of my students here, my undergraduate. Okay, so I asked them to present, and from their presentation, I know that this is their work. Yeah, if they are motivated and usually when the students passionate about writing something, it seems that yeah, when they present, they really enthusiastic to present their ideas, their project. Yeah, so that's the first way presentation. And then I believe your second question was how to check whether is the website or the reference is accurate. Is that right, Zikri?
Yes, ma'am. And then I
Yeah.
think students still can find a way to avoid the AI checker. They still use AI to avoid AI checker.
Okay. Yeah. So
Still
you mean,
humanize the text.
all right. Yeah. So there's a way actually. So when you first when you it depends actually, yeah. So which EI that you use in order to find the references. So for me, in my opinion, using ChatGPT in finding references it's not actually a good idea. Yeah, because ChatGPT or chatbot, any type of chatbot is not the function of this is not for for research, yeah, and for conducting literature review. So if you would like to probably there's something called the chat PDF, yeah. So you can use that, but of course again you need to be careful when using it. And what else? I remember something. So Scopus is a very famous, usually, what is that? Index, yeah. Usually the journals that if it's in Scopus index, is very reputable. So in Scopus, actually there is Scopus EI. So you can use that in Scopus EI to find some reputable references to use in research. And of course, as I said, you cannot use ChatGPT in order to look for the references, because most of the time the result of ChatGPT is hallucination. So it means that they is yeah, the references are fake. So what you need to do, if you are still using ChatGPT or Gemini, of course you need to cross check. Yeah, so go to the and that's our duty, or we are we need to go back or cross check and check again, yeah, whether this article or this reference is there or not, because this yeah, I came across with that several times, yeah. So I need to cross check again and again. And then yeah, so I think that's my answer for now. What about you, Rachel?
I absolutely agree. Great question, Zikri. I agree with what you said there. Lydia, I really feel that actually it's about setting the right task. So, making sure that there's a way that we can verify So giving, there was that other great question about if you're teaching sociolinguistics or social cultural theory, giving a critical incident that the students have not seen before and asking them to apply the theory to it without access to AI, for example, would be a task that will really show you. Presenting, micro teaching is another element. So if you understand grammar translation or communicative language teaching or total physical response, AI can generate this whole kind of thing, but can you do it in a micro teaching situation? So obviously the other question of this is practicality. So if you have 150, 200 students, it's very hard to have micro teaching for each of them, so we have to kind of find ways where we're ensuring that the students are drawing on those higher order thinking, that the creative, critical things that we want them to do. So it's all about the task and making sure it's also practical and feasible given our situation and circumstances institutionally. But yeah, asking them to add things into that only they could add. We've been talking about these things in class. I want you to comment on this critical incident or on this case study or whatever, showing your understanding of those things. The other thing is it's not just hallucinations, but also we know you can tell when something has been AI generated. It has a different tone. Sometimes keywords are used in a way that don't make a lot of sense. They're just kind of there. There'll be a sort of a different kind of way that the clauses, lots of lists. There'll be ways that you can tell that this is not actually necessarily kind of this person's idea. So yeah, but verifying it in different ways as my wonderful colleague Lydia has said. It's so great to meet a lot of your students too, Lydia. It's fantastic. So yeah, great questions, Ikri.
Okay, thank you, Russell and Ibu Maludia for the answer. And it was with the last question for this section because Professor Dr. Hazlina Abdullah already coming. Good morning, Professor Dr. Hazlina Abdullah.
Good morning. Sorry that I joined a bit late.
Okay, it's okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we will begin our second section with the last speaker is Associate Professor Dr. Hazlina Abdullah from the Faculty of Major Language Studies at University Science Islam Malaysia. She holds a postdoctoral education on School of Education, Faculty of Art, Designs and Architecture, University of New South Wales, Sydney, Australia, and a PhD in Education from the International Islamic University Malaysia, a Master of Education in TESOL from University Pendidikan Sultan Idris, and a Bachelor of Education in TESOL from the University of Warwick, United Kingdom. She has over 2 decades of experience in English language education, beginning her career as an English teacher before serving as a lecturer, senior lecturer, and now an associate professor. Her research span language and literacy, second language learning, academic writing, refugee education, and special education. With numerous publications in Scopus Index Journal, she has also led and contributed to multiple national and institutional research projects, particularly in literacy development and English language education. We warmly invite you to begin your presentation, Dr. Hazlina Abdullah. Time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen now? Yep, okay. So, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And very good.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, it is an honor to be here today with you guys. I can see Dr. Lydia and also Dr. Rachel, is it? Hi. Okay, so the theme of this postgraduate English language Education International webinar is Becoming Competent English Language Education Researchers in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. I believe that is a theme that speaks to ambition, vision, and also high standards. But I would like to ask a provocative question right at the start, yeah? What does competent and excellent mean for us, the researchers, when an AI can draft a solid literature review in less time than it takes to brew a cup of coffee? Yeah? So, my talk today is not about the technology itself, when it is about us, the researchers. Okay, it is about codifying a set of principles for human inquiry in a time of algorithmic disruption, I would say. And today, we will define the researcher's creed, redefining competence in the age of AI. Before we go further, I would like to show this slide here, yeah, something for us to ponder. Firstly, I put the definition of the word creed. So the word creed is actually a set of beliefs or aims which guide someone's actions. So we are now talking about the researcher's creed, our creed as a researcher in the AI era. Okay. We know that we are living through the fastest transformation era in this research history. Okay, so I think you can hit the emoji if you feel that research demands are speeding up now. I think everybody will agree. Yeah. Okay. It's just a warming up session. All right, here, let's ground this session with a bit of mantra here. Okay, we often hear that we fear AI replacing human workers. But in the realm of academic research, I believe this fear is actually maybe fundamentally misplaced. To me, AI is not a threat to the researcher, it is the threat to the non-critical researcher. So I highlighted that, yeah, to the non-critical researcher. The machines, we know that they have automated the measurable and the derivative. They excel at synthesis. And this leaves us, the human experts, with a vital, irreplaceable role, a role of interpretation, a role of critic, and also the novelty of our research. Therefore, the core question that we face now, and the one that drives my talk is, what does competent and excellent look like when machines can draft a literature review in seconds? So that is the core question, all right? And the answer lies in mastering a new set of competencies. Okay, before we go further as well, just a quick poll. How often do you currently use AI tools in your research process? Maybe you can just shout out. Yeah, anybody to the left-hand side of the continuum? Never. Or occasionally, and often. Anybody? You can just shout out your answers. How often do you use AI tools? Anyone? Okay, I'm sure it will go towards number 3 and number 4. Yeah, very often. And maybe some of you is essential to your workflow. Am I right?
Yes, in the chat section is 4 and 3 dominant the answer.
Yeah, okay. All right. In the chat. Okay, all right. Okay, two often, yeah. The others are, okay, some are 4. Many of you are 2 and 3. Okay. Right. Okay. So yeah, I think for most students, especially postgraduate students, lecturers as well, it's becoming more essential to your work. Right, let's move on. It's not moving, sorry. What happened to my slide? Okay. So, I will start with the part one of my presentation today, which is to define the new core competencies. Okay, so competence number one is criticality. Okay, criticality. The great paradox of AI is the hallucination effect. Okay, I'm not sure whether you have heard about this, but if you Google this, it's quite becoming more prominent now. The hallucination effect. AI provides a plausible, coherent, however, they are sometimes fundamentally flawed and giving fabricated answers. Okay, therefore, our value has shifted. We move from the relatively simple task of finding information to the far more complex task of evaluating its quality, its origin, and the biasness as well. So this leads to the researcher's role, which is we need to validate. Okay, we must validate every AI-generated input. We must check the citations. We must verify the coding schemes used when we do qualitative analysis. The machine has provided the speed. It's quick, yeah, but the intellect remains human. Okay, and the humans are us, the researchers. So if you delegate a task to AI, you are still the guarantor of that task accuracy. You cannot just rely on the AI, just ask a common or a universal question and expect AI to give everything to you without checking. All right? We also need to uphold the new standard of research integrity. What do I mean by the new standard of research integrity? This means to adhere to evolving ethical guidelines for scholarly use of AI. For example, if you Google COPE, C-O-P-E, this is an organization talking about ethics, okay, especially in this age of AI. And then other major journal standards as well. If you send your publication, your manuscript to maybe Springer or any Scopus index journals, yeah, they will definitely have certain standards. So we must be transparent about how we use AI, whether for drafting, whether for translation or for data analysis, and this is to maintain our credibility of our work, credibility of our writing, and then towards publication as well. Competence number two is creativity and nuance. AI, as we know, is a brilliant pattern detector, okay? But it is limited by its training data. What do I mean by pattern detector? When AI gives you the answers, it's actually from the data that they have. The more people use AI, the more people use the internet, the more data that they have, then that's the patterns, yeah? It excels also at existing patterns. However, it fundamentally struggles with novel research questions. So for example, if you ask a large language models, LLM, for the 5 best practices in teaching vocabulary, for example, then you will definitely get a great summarized answer. Yeah, just a questions, a universal question like that. But if you ask a more specific one, for example, how does a tahfiz student's rigorous hafazan routine or the memorization of the Quran influence their motivation and efficacy in acquiring English vocabulary that has no direct Arabic equivalent. So why do I give an example from Tahfiz context is because for now I'm doing a project on Tahfiz and English language. Yeah. So if you ask very specific questions like that, okay, that level of specific, complex, and also culturally bounded inquiry, where our value lies, then that is why how and what and where AI can still help you, but you as the researcher has the upper hand. Okay. What I'm trying to say is that we must focus on uniquely human problems. For example, complex cultural contexts, deep pedagogical issues, and also emotional impact. Right? The third competence. The third competence is ethical oversight. Yeah. We know that the machine is not neutral. It is built on data sets that reflect existing human biases. So again, like I said, AI, they will give us answers based on patterns, and the patterns are coming from the users. So biasness is there. Okay. So the third competence again is ethical oversight. We must identify and also mitigate algorithmic bias. For example, whether it's gender bias in sample generation, regional dialect bias in transcription, or even maintaining data privacy and confidentiality when piping sensitive learner data into a third-party tool. So basically, we are the ethical firewall. Okay, I put here also a reference, a very recent one, Lee and Lee 2024. They wrote about AI bias in educational data analysis. So you can read more on that, yeah. Now, let's move from theory just now to practical application within our field of English language education. Okay, so here I'm again zooming into motivation in English language education, yeah. Motivation is the perennial challenge in English language education research. It's complex, dynamic, and highly context dependent, and it resists simple reductive measurement. So our challenge is to answer this question: how can AI reveal its subtleties rather than just flattening the data? Right? So how does AI help us with this? So AI is our tool for revealing those subtleties. So for example, we can use sentiment analysis. What is this? It's driven by, again, LLM, large language models, to analyze thousands of learner reflective journals, for example, classifying emotional tones and tracking motivational shifts over the semester. So we can use this application of AI. Another example, we can use modeling, perhaps to test correlations between behavioral data like apps usage frequency or homework completion rates against self-reported motivation scores. So basically the takeaway is that AI helps us to quantify the qualitative experience of motivation, leading to richer and more defensible findings. Okay, so these are the things that we can use AI in our work, not just asking and asking them, the AI, to just produce answers for us. We have to use it as a tool. Okay. Are we doing good for now? Yeah. Okay. So like I mentioned earlier, my current research context involves a setting rich in discipline, which is Tahfiz education, which presents, I think, a fascinating research environment. For, is it Rachel? For your information, Tahfiz is it's for students or people who are memorizing the Quran. So basically, maybe a bit of background that I would like to share with you. Normally, Tahfiz background students, they will focus more on the Arabic language, and most of them are quite weak in the English language. So what I'm doing now, my research project, I go to Tahfiz schools, and then I interview the students and also the Tahfiz teachers, see how do they view the English language. So in Malaysia, I think in Indonesia, they do have Tahfiz as well, a lot of Tahfiz centers in schools. So I went to two different types of Tahfiz in Malaysia. The one is that they are under the Ministry of Education, and they integrate the mainstream science, maths subjects with Islamic education subjects. And the other one is purely Tahfiz schools or institutions where they do not learn other subjects. They focus only on the Islamic education. So I went to both schools. And nowadays, the teachers and the students, they are positive about learning English. Okay, so this research context is very close to my heart. I would like to help the Tahfiz students to master the English language, because they have very good Islamic knowledge, but they cannot disseminate it to a wider global audience because of the limitation in English language mastery. So that is what I'm working on. And for your information, I'm also doing an English module for them. Okay. So back to this one. This Tahfiz context, yeah, the research challenge, it will lead to a compelling research question. For example, how do the intense memory and routine skills developed in Tahfiz influence English language learning efficacy? So I'm giving one example, maybe specifically in vocabulary acquisition. Okay, because Hafiz students, they are good in memorizing. So I would like to know, okay, how this intense memory and routine skills of Tahfiz students influence their English language learning efficacy, specifically maybe in vocab acquisition. I'm giving an example, yeah. So this research question is steeped in cultural and religious practice. So it's a question only a human researcher can meaningfully pose this, right? If you just ask, you won't ask that to an AI, they cannot answer it. So this is what I mean by the researcher himself or herself being the upper hand. Okay, only a human researcher can meaningfully pose this kind of research questions. So how do AI come in? This is when AI becomes our powerful co-pilot. We can use it to build a comparative corpus by juxtaposing classical Arabic or Quranic English terms against contemporary English language education texts, for example. We can then use sophisticated statistical modeling to explore the interplay between the Hafiz or the memorizer, okay, memorization habits, and also English vocabulary retention rates. So AI does the heavy lifting with the data, but we provide the profound, the context-specific interpretation. Okay? We'll move on, yeah? Next one. The last key integration point is shifting our perspective from the snapshot study to the longitudinal and real-time study. So AI enables us to manage, to process, and also to analyze the large-scale but often messy data sets that are necessary for real-time and long-term research. These are the kind of data that truly reveals learning trajectories, not just single point performance. So a fantastic case use is personalized intervention. AI can analyze vast amounts of learning analytics. For example, the time spent, the errors made, the patterns of success, and automatically cluster learners by their needs in real time. So our role is not really to build the clustering algorithm. It is to design the robust intervention studies based on those clusters. So we use AI to track the differential efficacy of our pedagogical interventions over the long term. And this will move from did this work question to for whom did this work best and why? So can you see how we can integrate AI as a tool in our field, in our expertise? Okay. So before we conclude, let's engage these critical aspects that we have been discussing. So the scenario that I put, imagine a researcher needs to study the impact of a new digital vocabulary app on students in a Tahfiz school, but this school has strict limitations on screen time and general technology use due to the nature of their practice. So that's a scenario. And the challenge, your task as an expert researcher is to answer the question, how can you design a method to measure vocabulary impact accurately while respecting the severe time and technological constraints of the setting? Okay, so maybe you can think about it, discuss a bit on that. So to me, this kind of challenge requires our creativity, requires our ethical constraint, and also critical thinking. AI, they might suggest a 24/7 logging app, a non-starter in the context. And maybe the human solution might involve paper-based logbooks, using the app only for 10 minutes a day under supervision, or perhaps a carefully designed short-term qualitative interview protocol. So what I'm trying to say again is that the technology must serve the research context. It's the tool in the research context, not the other way around. Okay, again, the technology should serve the research context and not the other way around. Okay, so I'm so sorry. Actually, I'm having our convocation session, so I'm here to share my thoughts on this. And now, let me summarize the 3 core tenets of the Researcher's Creed for this new era. Yeah, the Researcher's Creed that I put it as the title just now. So basically, there are 3 pillars of the Competence 2.0 in this era. Number 1, AI automates the measurable. Okay, so we embrace AI for efficiency. We can use it for transcription, for example, for basic data coding, for literature mining, and also statistical tasks. This can free your time from the mechanics of research, the routine, the hard work. Okay. Number 2, you interpret the meaningful. Dedicate your human intellect to formulating novel, nuanced questions and providing the ethical, cultural, and pedagogical interpretation that only human expertise can deliver. And the third competence is on ethics govern everything. So we must apply critical thinking to identify and mitigate biasness in all AI outputs. So I would like to make a final call to action. Let us all commit to becoming not just researchers with AI, but ethical, competent, and highly relevant researchers because of it. Okay, which brings me to my final word. Integrity is your highest competence. Okay, these are some references. And with that, I thank you. And here, if you can see, I put on some examples. In the middle is the COPE, C-O-P-E just now. The ethical is an organization talking about authorship and AI and so on. In Malaysia, in our university, we have a garis panduan or a guideline on the use of technology, AI technology. Okay, this is on your left-hand side, yeah? The far left. This is my university's guidelines. And in Malaysia in general, from the Ministry of Higher Education, we have also a guideline of technology, AI technology. Yeah, and we do have this. I'm sure in Indonesia, and other countries also, there are emerging policies, guidelines provided as well. Okay, with that, I thank you so much. If there's any question.
Thank you so much, Associate Professor Dr. Hazlina Abdullah, for the insightful presentation. Your presentation is so insightful because there is correlation between the integration of AI itself to the Tahfidz school in Malaysia. Maybe it can be interpreted in Indonesia too. Well, yes. And the next section will be question and answer. Please participant if you have any questions according to what Dr. Hazlina Abdullah already presents. Okay, the first question by Isna Maulida. Please turn on your audio.
Yep.
Okay, Ibu Isna, please deliver your questions.
Okay, thank you so much for this opportunity, Ms. Hazlina. Nice to see you. My name is Isna Maulida. I am a student from UIN Antasari master program. I am very excited on your presentation. Was very amazing. I am interested on your opinion that AI has hallucination. And you said that AI can become a powerful co-pilot for your students who are hafiz in memorizing Al-Quran. So I'd like to ask, is AI hallucination when you are using it as a co-pilot for your hafiz students and those activities on memorizing Al-Quran? Maybe that's all. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Miss Isna. Yeah? Okay. Well, let me clarify firstly. Like I said in the presentation just now, I'm in the midst of doing or performing this research about Tahfiz students with English language. Yeah, but I have not yet incorporated AI use when teaching them. Not yet. But what I'm sharing with you now is maybe a way of integrating AI into our research and not being, still being at the upper hand. So we, in our research expertise in our field, we have to still be the expert, still be the guru, not the other way around. We shouldn't be trusting the AI too much. So the hallucinating effect, if you read more on it, maybe the basic example that I can give is that if you try, maybe some of you did, if you try asking the AI to provide a draft or journal article for this title, blah, 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 blah. And then they can generate, right? They can actually generate it, right? Have you tried, Isna?
Yes, I have tried sometimes.
Okay. But when I
not
say
properly using AI.
Mm,
Mm.
because one example that I can see, very simple one, is that in the draft that the AI gave you as the journal article, you can try this, you can experiment this, and there are references, citations, yeah, and even the reference list they can give you, but you cannot trust that 100%. Because it looks like it's real with the author, with the year, the title, even the journal name, even with the page numbers. But if you take that and rechecked, you will find that some of the articles are non-existent. AI just created it, but giving us a hallucination effect that, oh, it looks good. It follows the APA system citation, yeah, but it's not there. So you cannot trust AI. And then what will happen if you proceed with the publication and so on? And when people read it, and then they check it when they want to refer to the actual journal or reference list, it's not actually there. So it will tarnish your name, our name as a researcher, and it will bring down our quality as a researcher, as a writer, as a scholar. Yeah. So that is one example of hallucination effect that AI can give. They can give you very nice reference lists which are non-existent sometimes. Do I answer the question?
Yes, of course. Maybe I'd like to know more what then happen if we use AI in the context of memorizing Al-Quran. Yes, maybe for taking AI as information source when we ask about surah or hadith maybe, and then we connected this hallucination condition. What are the bad impact then? Is it dangerous maybe, or yeah,
Oh,
something
okay.
like
All
that
right. Now I
maybe?
understand your the second part
Yeah.
of the question. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Again, because hallucination effect, it might not give us the actual thing, the correct thing, the correct information, especially for Islamic elements. It's really dangerous, right? Because it affects our faith, our understanding about what Quran and Hadith say. So again, it's the same thing. We have to be ethical. We have to put ourselves as the upper hand. For example, maybe for me, my background is English language education. So when myself and my team, when we produce a module, we produce all the content, and then at the end, before publication, before finalizing everything, we have to give this draft, the module draft, to someone who is expert in the Islamic education, Islamic teachings or Islamic studies background. So I'm doing that now. So for example, my module, we have 12 topics now ready, and then it's now with we call it a reviewer, an expert review. So he will clarify whether the surah, whether the Quranic verses, whether the hadith that we put inside our module, English module, to teach the Tahfiz students, whether they are valid or not. So we have to undergo those, the routine of our research procedures as well. We have to have expert reviewers. So that's one way of countering the hallucination effect and the danger of misleading things. Yeah. Yeah. That one is a must.
Yeah, someone controlling. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Ms. Haslina.
Thank
Very
you for the
nice to
question,
see
Isna.
you. It was a very great explanation. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Salam.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Ibu Isna, for the questions, and Professor Dr. Hazlina Abdullah for the answer. So the next question, please raise your hands or type on chat box.
Can I ask a question?
Okay, no, it's
Maybe, yeah, anyone who is familiar with Indonesian Tahfiz schools or Tahfiz institutions, how is it like the Tahfiz system in Indonesia, specifically in Antasari, is it? Win
yes.
Antasari. Antasari is a place,
Uh,
or is it the name of the
the
university?
name of the university.
Oh, the name.
Yes, the name of the university.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Is
So
Dr.
as we
Lydia
know
around?
about, okay.
Sorry, okay, if you Miss Adinda, is it your name?
Okay, yes.
Yeah, you want to answer?
Okay, about Tafits schools, I experienced this on my boarding school because I was in uh, Islamic boarding school in Malang, and
Okay.
it's called Ar-Rahmah International Islamic Boarding School. And we have a target for Tafit itself, like for example, for senior high school, it must be memorized for 5 juz of Quran itself. So uh, they separate the time for after subuh, we should reciting or memorizing Quran, and also after asar. So at 7 or at 8, we start uh, going to school for formal education. So it's formal education and religion education. It's a difference like that.
But is English emphasized in Tahfiz schools?
Not really in English, but we use sometimes in Arabic itself, the language.
Not really, right?
Yeah,
So it's more on Arabic kind of.
it's more in Arabic. So it's just a new insight if you are presented about the English in the Tafit, integrated in Tafit itself.
Okay. So quite similar scenario in Malaysia as well. So that's why this Tahfiz project with English language is very close to my heart, because I think it's a ways that those Islamic scholars, they cannot converse well in English. If they do, they can reach more people, reach more hearts, I would say. All right.
All right, maybe the other participants wanna give the insight about that.
I saw something in the chat box that Prince Antasari. Oh, Antasari is a prince name. Is it? Thank you, Rachel. See you.
Thank you, Rachel, for attending this webinar. We will send your certificates on your email, Russell. Thank you. Okay, there's an answer from Fitriyandi, like Antasari is the prince of the kingdom in South Borneo or South Kalimantan here. Okay, any question, participants? Well, if there's no questions anymore, I will conclude today's webinar. Today's webinar has shown us that becoming a competent English language education researcher in the age of AI is not just about learning new tools. It is about embracing curiosity, staying open to innovation, and using technology in ways that remain ethical, reflective, and centered on our learners. AI offers us exciting possibility, and with the right mindset, it can truly enrich the work as we do as educators and researchers. Before we end the webinar, I will show the token of appreciation for is my screen is view. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, this is for Associate Professor Dr. Hazlina Abdullah. We would like to offer this certificate because you already deliver your insightful presentation for today international webinar. We will be sending your certificate to your email. And for the next is for Dr. Hajah Nurmaludia, MA. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us, and we will send this certificate to your email.
I hope my sharing session is suits the theme,
Yeah,
and
yes.
also yeah, hope it's
Absolutely,
beneficial.
yes.
Yeah, this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for our wonderful speakers and all participants for your enthusiasms and soulful attention. We hope today's insight inspire you to continue exploring and growing in this evolving landscape of AI and education. It has been a pleasure to learn together, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future events. Have a warm and inspiring day ahead. Thank you very much for today. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Before we close, there is a attendance list on chat box, and please make sure that your name and your identity is clear because the certificates will be delivered in your email. Thank you, Associate Professor Dr. Haslina Abdullah, that already joined in your busy time today here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Assalamualaikum. So can I
Waalaikumsalam
leave?
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
I can
Yes,
leave. Yeah.
Ibu, thank you.
Alhamdulillah, we have reached the conclusion of our international webinar. On behalf of the organizing committee, we extend our deepest gratitude to all the speakers for the insightful contribution, to our moderator for expertly guiding the session, and to all participants for your active engagement. We hope today's discussion enrich your academic journey and inspire continued exploration, particularly as we navigate the evolving era of artificial intelligence in education. I'm Atia signing off and look forward to welcome you at our next academic event. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and have a wonderful day.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank
you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.